Welcome to the 2-Acre Homestead. Come along with us on our journey from a small suburban homestead lifestyle to our new lifestyle, homesteading in the rural countryside of southern Arizona. We'll share with you our tips, tricks, successes, and failures from both our past suburban lifestyle to our new rural lifestyle, all on the 2-Acre Homestead. Welcome to the 2-Acre Homestead. My name is Lisa, and I'm your host today. So today we are getting into some semantics today, and we are going to be discussing the all-important question. What is a homesteader? So I looked it up in the dictionary and dictionary.com, and homesteader, a noun. And the first explanation is a person owning a homestead. Really? That's the best that they could do. The second explanation is a U.S. or Canadian, a person who acquires or possesses land under the homestead law. The third definition is a person taking part in a homesteading scheme. Well, that sounds suspicious, honestly, a homestead scheme. But then I looked up just the definition of homestead. And this is even more laughable. The definition is a house and the farmland it is on. Really? That's what a homestead is. A house and the farmland it is on. A homestead could be a piece of government land that a person could acquire by living on it and farming it when the western part of the U.S. was being settled. That is the textbook definition of a homestead. I was dumbfounded when I read this. And this is not new to me. I've read this over the years several times, and I still have the same reaction every time I read it, that's what a homestead is. A home and the land around it. Oh my goodness. That is so left open to interpretation. You can go every which way possible. But there's one more definition that I do want to read to you guys, and that is the legal definition of a homestead. And this is according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary. It says, the home and adjoining land with any buildings that is occupied usually by a family as its principal residence. An estate created by law in a homestead, especially for the purpose of taking advantage of a homestead exemption. Wow. The definition, the legal definition of a homestead is just as equally broad as the definition, the normal people definition of a homestead, a house with the land adjoining, the land that it's on. That's a homestead. Well, that is the textbook definition of homestead. And it's your principal residence, basically. And the land that goes with it is a homestead. But that does not define what a homesteader is. A person who is homesteading is. So, two different things. And now that we know what the technical definition of a homestead is, I would have to say that for the purpose of my podcast, this podcast here on the 2-Acre Homestead, when I talk about homesteading, and I think it's safe to say that most of us in this community mean the same thing. When we talk about homesteading and what a homesteader is, a homestead, I agree with the legal definition, and that is the home and adjoining land with any buildings that is occupied, usually by a family as its principal residence. I agree with that definition. That is, in my opinion, the definition of a homestead. That can be somebody who lives in suburbia with a backyard. That can be somebody who lives in an apartment with maybe a balcony, or somebody who lives in a townhouse and they have, I don't know how, if you're very familiar with townhouses, but at least here in the state of Arizona, when you have a townhouse, you have a shared wall and you have a very, very small patio backyard. That could also fit the legal definition of a homestead. Why? Because there's adjoining land. Now, in an apartment complex, that's a little bit trickier because you just have the balcony. Is the balcony considered land? I'm not a legal expert, but I'm going to say, could you have dirt that's on that balcony? Could you have pots? Yeah. You could have potted plants. So you have some land, okay? So to me, that qualifies as a homestead because it's your principal residence with the adjoining land and buildings that you occupy. So now that we know what a homestead is, shall we define what a homesteader is? Well, it's interesting because when we go back to the textbook dictionary here of what a homesteader is, somebody who is actively homesteading. Let's see here. I am literally online right now looking up homesteader. And interestingly enough, Merriam Dictionary is not pulling up homesteader, only homestead. There are other words that it's using, homesteads, homesteading, but not homesteader. Now, previously, I had looked up a different, I believe it was either dictionary.com. Yeah, dictionary.com. It says a person owning a homestead. A person taking part in a homesteading scheme. That sounds just so evil that you're partaking in this homesteading scheme of things. You're scheming something. You're plotting something. No, you're not. You're growing something. You're producing. And here we go with society again, trying to paint a terrible picture of people who are interested in producing their own food. You're scheming. You're a part of a scheme. For this podcast, and from my point of view, a person who is a homesteader is somebody who is actively participating in the production of food for themselves and others. Whether that food is protein, vegetables, or anything else, that is going to be consumed dietarily, the production of food in any way, shape, or form qualifies a person as a homesteader. So again, that person who is in the city, who's on a balcony, and they are producing food for themselves, is that person a homesteader? Yes. Is that person limited in what they can do? Absolutely, they're limited. They don't have enough land to produce for themselves. However, are they producing something? And if they are producing something, even if it's just, a couple of pots that give them salad, yes, they are producing some sort of edible food on their homestead. Sometimes we tend to think of homesteaders in the frame or in the box of this person has acreage and they produce all of their own food for the year. Yes, that person is definitely a homesteader. But don't let that idea of a homesteader define you as a homesteader. When my husband and I first started homesteading, we started homesteading in a little backyard in downtown Phoenix. And with time, we moved out of the Phoenix metropolitan area, and we thought we were moving to a slower pace of life at that time. And we decided to move to Tucson, Arizona. And it was a lot slower. And now we are deeper into southern Arizona, and we are in rural part of Arizona on 2 acres. Sometimes it takes time to get to the point where you have acreage. But if you're looking for the homesteading lifestyle, the saying is so true. Start to grow wherever you are planted. If you have been planted in the middle of a city in a high-rise apartment building, start to grow there. Start setting yourself up so that you can move, let's say, into a more bigger, maybe a townhouse that has a bigger yard, or maybe just a regular home, a regular house with a regular backyard. There's so much that you can grow in a standard size United States backyard. There is so much food a person can produce in a regular backyard. You can produce, and I guarantee you, at least up to 70% of your own vegetables. And if you don't have an HOA, you can have animals back there. Now, you do need to follow the rules of your county, the rules of your city when it comes to having animals. But if you can have animals, I would encourage you to have animals. Slowly get into that as well, because the production, being able to produce your own protein is a game changer. It really is. I know for my husband and I, that was a game changer for us. And we did that. We kept chickens, not just laying hens, but we kept meat birds as well in our house in Tucson. And we were in a suburban backyard. Granted, our yard was a lot larger than the standard lot. I believe we were on 0.16 of an acre. So we were a little bit larger than the standard lot. Plus, there was no HOAs where we lived. That was by design. We did not want to be in a community with HOA. And when we started producing our own protein on our homestead, on our suburban homestead, that is when we started filling in loops filling in gaps. And we started setting up systems, and we started seeing those systems work, because we would feed the chickens our table scraps, and the chickens would feed the eggs, and then we could eat the chickens and start the process all over again. And we even got into, when our chickens got broody, we would, let them hatch out the eggs. We gave them fertilized eggs because we didn't have a rooster, and neither was having a rooster allowed. And so we gave them the fertilized eggs, and we let them hatch them out. And we have some of those chicks to this day. Excuse me. So what does it mean to be a homesteader? Homestead where you are. Produce your food wherever you are. Don't be boxed in by some textbook dictionary that states that you have to do this or do that. Don't let the dictionary make you feel like you're a bad person, that you're scheming something. Simply put, a homesteader is a person who produces food for themselves and others. So on the next podcast, we are going to be talking about being an overwhelmed homesteader, how not to get overwhelmed, and what to do when that happens. Because I guarantee you it is going to happen. No matter how hard you try, no matter how patient you are, it eventually is the feeling of being overwhelmed, whether it's being overwhelmed with your harvest or your ideas or just everything. How do you deal with that feeling of being overwhelmed? How do you take a step back and reassess? So that's what we're going to talk about in the next podcast. I hope that this finds you well. I hope everything is well in your life and in your homestead and your homestead dreams. And until next time, keep dreaming of that homestead, keep making it happen, and be safe out there.